everyone. Welcome to the January board meeting of the MTA. I apologize. I pride myself on starting meetings on time. And for my last board meeting, I'm starting one late, so I apologize. Do we have any public speakers, Mr. Morello?
We do indeed, Mr. Chairman. We have 25 speakers registered. We delayed the start of the meeting because a number of them were delayed signing in downstairs, and we didn't want to have to cut people off when we knew we had a larger number of them. But given that number, I would remind all of our speakers to try to stick to or close to our 2-minute comment limit so that we can be fair to all of the speakers. That said, the first speaker is Anthony Simon. He'll be followed by James Fahey. Mr. Simon, good morning.
Good morning. Maybe I should take a motion to adjourn. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members. I'm here today just for a very important speech that I want to make that's going to be real quick. We've had some, obviously, back and forths, and me and Tom have been on the opposite side of the table many times, and that's our job. But there is no man more that I respect than this man at the table, and you and all of us are going to miss this man. He has more dedication, more heart, and cares about this agency and its members like I've never seen before. I cannot say enough about him. We have a lot of Monday morning quarterbacks in our business, and Tom has gotten a lot of them. But I tell you what, he's played in every Sunday evening game and has always been the lead quarterback, and he should be damn proud, and so should everybody in this room. We are going to miss the knowledge, the dedication that you give to this agency beyond anybody could ever miss. And I, as a union leader, we've gone toe-to-toe, Tom. And you know what? You are a man of your word, and you are a class act, and you deserve a retirement with your family filled. And I know you're not retiring because you just can't do it, but you have done amazing things. And the staff that you put into place will probably follow suit in what you started to deliver and have delivered, and you put a good staff together. And I look forward to working with them as well, and I look forward to seeing you in the future on different terms. So God bless, and good luck to you and your family.
Next speaker is James Fahey, and he'll be followed by Council Member Danique Miller. Mr. Fahey.
Yeah, that's me. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board.
If you're signed up to speak, we'll call your name. Thank you.
We got
Mr.
that in
Fahey.
the union too, sir. Don't worry about it. Okay. I'm going to start again. Don't start the timer there, Mr. Spielberg. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I am James J. Fahey, Chairman of the Executive Board of the Association of Commuter Rail Employees, representing the largest union on Metro North. I appreciate this opportunity to address you today as the Chairman Pendergrass has announced his retirement from our MTA family. Tommy has done so many great things at the MTA. He arrived at the helm in January of 2013 on our 30th anniversary of Metro North. We were facing numerous and significant challenges. Much of the rebuilding and success of our earlier years have been eroding rapidly, and we are sorely in need of real leadership. Because the chairman brought lifelong knowledge and experience in actual operation of railroads and a straightforward communication style, he was able to quickly size up our dilemma, bringing in President Giletti and a highly qualified management staff. To work together with labor, we immediately began to turn the ship around, boss. We are, sorry, I got to flip here, in a much better place today because of this, sir. Mr. Pendergrass recognized the essential changes were necessary, paramount of which was to improve the safety culture. We have witnessed a return to a solid railroad fundamentals. Get off the buzzer. Under his leadership, which has seriously enhanced safety and professionalism at Metro North. Improved daily job safety briefing as well as full commitment to all operating rules have clearly changed the culture here in a positive way, sir. But most of all, communication has been the major key to safety and major other improvements. We have made under the leadership of this chairman, and we we have made under the leadership of this chairman, and we have restored a very safe operating environment, which we can all be very proud of. I'd like to thank the chairman for his steadfast commitment to our military veterans. That's very dear to my heart. Before his arrival, we were lacking in support and opportunity for those employees that make the selfless sacrifices to our nation and our freedoms. Under his leadership, we have witnessed the institution of policies that support our veterans in a very meaningful way, sir. Today, we have a payroll deduction program providing the capability for all MTA agencies, employees to directly contribute to the support of our veterans. This program provides significant support to our veterans by the MTA family. That is one we are extremely, extremely proud, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
In closing, again, I'd like to thank Mr. Pendergrass from the bottom of my heart, and I mean that, sir, for all he has done to bring back the pride to the organization that felt when we ran a first-rate, safe railroad operation that values professionalism and the contribution of the employees that make it happen every day. We consider the chairman's departure now as one of the greatest losses to New York Rail, and we're very sorry to see him go. And that's true. I know everybody says that.
Can we
Know
wrap it
that
up, Mr. Fahey?
we will proudly continue working with President Giletti in the years ahead to finish what you have started, to make our railroad the safest and the most professional in the nation. In over 30 years as a union leader, within a 40-year railroad industry career, boy, am I old, sir.
Could you wrap up, please, Mr. Fahey?
I have worked with many chairmen. I have enjoyed taking advantage of your enormous heart, sir. A heart that separates you from all the others and which makes you the greatest chairman of them all. And a true legend in the history of New York railroading. Congratulations, sir, to you and your family. I wish you the best, and I mean that. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fahey, for your relative brevity. Next speaker is Councilmember Danique Miller. He'll be followed by, if I get this right, Mary Parrison. Mr. Miller.
Good morning to the board, and certainly I echo the sentiments of my colleagues in labor and wishing Tom a very happy retirement and thanking you for his service in transportation. John, don't start. For your service to the MTA over the years, and it's been a pleasure for me to work with you, not only as a labor leader, but certainly as a member of the New York City Council, in which I am here today in that capacity to address the board. And so, as I mentioned, I'm Councilmember Danique Miller, representing the 27th District of Southeast Queens. But I'm also here in my capacity as a member of the Queens Coalition for Commuter Equity. And to voice my grievance and disapproval of the fare increase, which is to be voted on today. If this increase is approved that you are set to vote on, it will continue to exacerbate the burden which has increasingly impacted those in the city who cannot afford to live here in the city. At the same time, there are no plans to help those communities living in transportation deserts despite them paying the same fare. It is not fair, and they're not being given the same opportunities that other communities receive. This is why we formed a borough-wide Queens Coalition of current and former officials, business leaders, and residents, so that we can one day have equitable service to those in Manhattan and other parts of the city. Queens does not receive the same equitable services that Manhattan and other communities throughout the cities do. While we continue to lack services such as and burdened by overcrowding and the lack of transportation alternatives, but we do have and burdened by alternative facts of alternative and on-time performances. This situation has deterred capital projects in our borough that would increase working families' quality of life. It has infected our economy, our healthcare options, our educational options, and all those that freedoms that other parts of the cities enjoy. Southeast Queens, in particular, has been deemed by the federal government as an extreme transportation desert, where it takes more than 1.5 to 2 hours one way to get into Manhattan. And most of the residents there earn less than $35,000 a year. Studies have shown that this long commute every day leads to increased stress and health complications compared to those with multiple transportation options. Transportation can be the great equalizers, but community like mine's, the one that I represent, this without a reduced fare option. MTA has increased fares in the past. It has still not come with a plan to address the options of these communities. That is why all of my Queens colleagues in the council and state electeds have endorsed the Commuter Rail Equity Act, which would allow communities such as Southeast Queens to utilize the Long Island Railroad, in which we have multiple throughout the borough, but they are not cost effective, and do not allow for the thousands, hundreds of thousands of citizens to utilize those. We ask that that be a consideration, and that we certainly would continue to reject any and oppose any fare increase that does not produce equitable transportation options to these residents of Southeast and the Queens community. I again thank the board for allowing me to testify again to Mr. Pendergrass. I thank you for your service, but again, we are here in the capacity of a city council member, and it is not fair that you continue to burden these communities without providing equitable service. Thank you for allowing me to testify.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mary Parison. I hope I get that correct. To be followed by John Mooney.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the board. My name is Mary Parison. I'm the chair of a coalition of civics called Civics United for Railroad Environmental Solutions. We are asking for your support in the procurement of the cleanest locomotives that are EPA certified, CARB verified, Tier 4, to be used in your freight concession. I tried to speak last month at your board meeting, but was not permitted. I did, however, speak to President Nowakowski in the corridor, where he expressed that the transfer agreement between the Long Island Railroad and New York and Atlantic Railway is being looked at very carefully, and that no decision has been made. I'm here to say that this transfer agreement must be terminated, and you have the right to do that. New York and Atlantic failed to meet required safety standards, violating the transfer agreement. The FRA did a comprehensive safety review after New York and Atlantic's July 8, 2015 Maspeth crash. The report exposed New York and Atlantic to be using uncertified, untrained personnel to conduct your freight operations. I have letters and articles expressing concern from our elected officials, Congresswoman Meng, Assembly Members Nolan, Miller, Senator Adabo, Senator Boyle, Councilwoman Crowley, and Community Board 5, Queens. How can you consider renewing a transfer agreement with a company that has had accidents upon accidents? New York and Atlantic's Hicksville, Wyandanch accidents that knocked out on-time commuter service, or New York and Atlantic's crashing into the M-train bridge with a high car. And again, New York and Atlantic's Maspeth crash that could have killed a truck driver and injured others as they ran through 3 grade crossings. New York Atlantic has not historically maintained their grade crossings, and the FRA has recommended crossing upgrades in New York City. New York Atlantic has been using contractors and could not substantiate that their personnel was qualified and trained as required by federal law. The FRA was told that the engineer in the Maspeth crash fled the scene and was never found. Was he in the union and railroad retirement system, or an unqualified contractor operating freight trains in our communities in New York City? The MTA, Long Island Railroad, and New York Atlantic violated the Second Amendment of the transfer agreement signed in 1998 by then President Prendergast, and Bruce Lieberman from New York and Atlantic. This was to address the public concerns of waste by rail, and the MTA had a contractual and public duty to protect the public.
Could you conclude, please, Ms. Parison?
Correct, thank you. There wasn't supposed to be a truck-to-rail transfer in Queens, but there is at Review Avenue in Long Island City. There wasn't supposed to be any rail cars interchanged of solid waste in residential areas of Queens, but it happens every day in Middle Village. There wasn't supposed to be the storing of rail cars, but this happens every day. And rail cars were supposed to be covered, but they aren't. There was supposed to be a committee with appointees and periodic meetings to address waste by rail issues, and this has yet to happen. New York and Atlantic has proven to be untrustworthy and unsafe, putting communities and commuters in danger. We deserve safe, reliable, lawful operations from your public benefit corporation, and the MTA must terminate this transfer agreement and take responsibility for their freight concession and run it once again or get a private operator. I ask the MTA Board to address these concerns and others on this handout that I presented. Thank you for your time,
Thank
and I
you.
wish you well, Chairman.
Thank you. John Mooney. He'll be followed by Council Member Idanis Rodriguez. Mr. Mooney.
Good morning. My name is John Mooney, and I am the elected chairman for Station Agent Section of TW Local 100. I would like to state my solidarity with Marty Goodman and labor for Standing Rock. We demand that the MTA divest from banks that fund oil pipelines at Standing Rock. As chairman of the 2,700 station agents, I want to address the treatment of injured workers by the MTA in the new contract. Last month, transit workers who are injured testified before this board, demanding better treatment. And what did the MTA give these injured workers in the new contract? Worse treatment. In the new contract, transit workers injured on duty will be denied the right to use a doctor of their own choice and forced to use doctors that take orders from MTA bureaucrats. This new plan is known as Preferred Provider Organizations, PPO Network. And why is the MTA doing this? Simple, to save money. And how does the MTA plan on saving money? By denying workers medical treatment and rushing injured workers back to work before they are fully recovered. That's how the MTA will save money in the new contract. As the riding public celebrates Chairman Pendergast's retirement, his legacy will be that he left injured workers with less benefits. But this shouldn't be a surprise. The MTA has been violating injured workers' rights for years. If it's denying subway and bus workers who are injured on duty restricted duty jobs, or placing injured workers on probation, then firing them without a hearing, not paying injured workers, or even having private investigators follow a former union president around when he was on workers' comp. That's the history of the MTA. That's the history of Chairman Pendergast.
Thank you, Mr. Mooney. Council Member Idanis Rodriguez, and then Bradley Brashears.
Right?
Morning, Council Member.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and thank you to all our members and members of the public, especially thanks to the Chair, Tom Prettinger, for all your service running the best transportation system that we have in our nation, one in the world. I want to begin by thanking you and the MTA for all you do to make New York City one of the best cities in the world. Without the work you do, your staff and many transit workers throughout the city, we will not be the city we are today. I hope we can continue our partnership as transportation leaders in New York City. In my role as a chairman of the Transportation Committee, I'm ready to be a partner in whatever you're doing. I represent a community with a higher than average numbers of people living under the poverty line. There are many more New Yorkers across the city in similar situation, and that's why I support the whole initiative to provide a major discount for New Yorker living, a major Metro car discount for New Yorker living, especially living on poverty, especially those living on the poverty line. The MTA is left to raise fares every 2 years because the capital plans are funded by debt. The capital debt payments strain the operating budget, prompting fare hikes to close gaps. The more debt, the more need for fare increase, and the greater the burden placed on New Yorkers. If the MTA were to develop new dedicated revenue streams to fund the capital plan, there would be less reliance on debt and therefore less likely to raise fare. However, this takes us to today. New Yorkers are burned. Transportation, one of the few great equalizers, should be a human right, yet too often New Yorkers are left off the map and unable to afford the transportation available to them. Mass transportation is one of the most important parts in the city, and with this proposed fare increase, we are putting further out of reach the promise of opportunity that every New Yorker should enjoy. During my tenure as a chair of the Transportation Committee, I have sought to expand our transportation network to reach more New Yorkers in more ways. We have promoted bus rapid transit, we have supported bike share expansion, and we have called for a quick completion of mega projects to expand transit reach. But we have also looked at this from an economic justice perspective. New Yorkers must be able to use transportation regardless of their financial situation. This is why I'm leading the effort of the New York City Council for the Fair Fares initiative, which aims to subsidize fare for most unfortunate in this city who already struggle to purchase fares at $2.75 per ride. I urge you and the members of the MTA Board to reject this fare increase and look for alternative ways to make up the budget gap with fresh revenue streams for transit. This can start with the Plan Move New York, which would reduce car use in the congested central business district while providing funds for the MTA capital plan. It can be done with a revenue commuter tax for the many residents in the suburbs that commute into the city. The MTA can take advantage of the vast real estate portfolio under its command, redeveloping or selling valuable land. It can be done by utilizing more digital advertising throughout the system. It can be done by creating an adult station option for private companies to maintain subway stations, alleviating this cost from agency. Thank you for your services, and I hope that we can continue working together. Gracias.
Thank you very much. 5 down, 20 to go. Bradley Brashears to be followed by Lisa Hamner.
Thank you and good morning. My name is Brad Brashears, and I am a transportation planner with the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA. On behalf of the New York City Transit Writers Council, the PCAC is here once again today to speak for Freedom Ticket, an exciting proposal that we hope and believe has your full support. As an example of the impact that Freedom Ticket will have on thousands of riders, it can now take up to 2 hours to get from Southeast Queens to Lower Manhattan by bus and subway. With Freedom Ticket, that time will be reduced by more than 40 minutes each way. That's an hour and a half saved every day, and that's a lot of time. From the operational side, Freedom Ticket riders will be filling empty, non-revenue producing seats in an underutilized corridor, which is why Eric Adams is now a strong supporter because of the value to Brooklyn. In fact, though, the Freedom Ticket can potentially benefit the entire city. So we're asking that the MTA first move forward with the pilot program to be designed by April-May and implemented by September. Second, strongly market the Freedom Ticket to people riding in the pilot stations. And third, report to the board at the 3 and 5 month mark to ensure complete transparency. Finally, when the pilot program is successfully completed, we hope and expect that Freedom Ticket continues to advance and move into its next phase. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lisa Hamner, then Marty Goodman. Ms. Hamner.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Hamner. I would like to address the board in support of reduced fare Metro cards for low-income New Yorkers. I currently live at the Tillery Street shelter for single women in Brooklyn. I have a 30-year work history, but, and I won't bore you with the entire story, but due to conditions relating to domestic violence, I and my daughter have severe post-traumatic stress disorder and major depressive disorder. The HRA doctor declared me unfit for work, which means that I receive $114 a month in income from HRA, but I do not receive any assistance for public transportation. Of my own volition, I found a specialized computer training program that's 8.6 miles away from my shelter in Harlem. It's a 3-hour walk each way, which I can and have done. It's not reasonable to do this walk every day, but at $114 a month, I cannot afford a monthly Metro card. I can tell you firsthand that public transportation is a matter of life or death for many New Yorkers. There is a woman in the bed next to me in the shelter who did not make her medical appointment yesterday because she did not have a Metro card. She spent 3 weeks in the hospital having had a heart attack this month, was crying yesterday because she couldn't make her medical appointment, and the other women in the shelter were advising her to go to the train station and beg for a swipe. She said she couldn't handle the stress of begging for a swipe, not knowing if she would make it to see her doctor. There are other women in my homeless shelter who are working full-time, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, traveling through 2 boroughs, 2 trains, and a bus to get to various low-income jobs, and they cannot afford to purchase a monthly Metro card. I implore you to consider the fact that transportation is a basic public need, and to please consider the needs of these low-income New Yorkers.
Thank you very much. Marty Goodman, to be followed by Mr. X.
My name is Marty Goodman. I'm a former Local 100 Executive Board member. I'm retired. I want to first start with agreeing with John Mooney in his comments about the contract. I urge members to vote no. But I'm also here to talk about labor for Standing Rock. I traveled to North Dakota in October and was inspired by the Sioux Nation's struggle to stop hazardous oil pipelines on sacred land, land guaranteed by a so-called treaty. I am here to denounce the MTA ties with banks that fund the pipeline criminals. A Cherokee woman at Standing Rock told me what she had seen. Quote, "Women were screaming at a protest, 'We love you,' not doing anything. Their hands were up. Cops just grabbed their hands. One beanbag propelled by a gun hit a woman in the face. Another was thrown on the ground for no reason. They were all doing nothing. Medics with armbands were arrested, their equipment taken away." End quote. Cops even used dogs, shades of Mississippi. We say 500 years of stolen land, resources, and racist brutality is enough. Digging is Dakota Access Pipeline and Energy Transfer Partners. Funding them are companies employed by the MTA to engineer MTA bond sales and lucrative stock swaps. In addition, these companies receive hundreds of millions in mostly tax-free dividends on MTA bonds. These Wall Street crooks are prominent recipients of NYSER's pension investments. Who? Chase Bank, Citibank, Bank of America, and the notorious Goldman Sachs and Wells Fargo. Recently, Wells Fargo was fined $185 million for defrauding 2 million customers. Writers, the unjust 4% fare hike will go to banks that fund pipelines at Standing Rock with every swipe of the Metro card. Incredibly, the MTA touts its own, quote, green bonds, while funding fossil fuel corporate criminals. A divestment campaign has achieved $44 million in withdrawals, but that's only a start. MTA, cut all ties with banks.
Please wrap
that
up,
fund
Mr. Goodman.
Standing Rock oil pipelines. Victory to Standing Rock.
Thank you very much. Mr. X, to be followed by Jonathan Boyd, or Beeb. I apologize if I get that pronunciation wrong. Mr. X?
Tommy P., I'm so glad you're retiring. You did nothing for the MTA, which stands for money thrown away in the last 4 years. You started public hearings at a time where people are still working. You missed numerous MTA public hearings. The 12-5 through 19 public hearings were a joke. And I'd like to know, on 12/19, the MTA Police Department forced me to wait outside Brooklyn College in bitter cold weather, which is demeaning and unprofessional. The board members should say no to the fare and toll increases for 2 reasons. A, like Uncle Tom Prendergast, they missed numerous MTA public hearings. And B, they received free parking stickers from the New York City Police Department, which is a joke. The New Jersey and New York, a free Easy Pass for the New Jersey and New York Port Authority, which is a joke. And free Metro cards for the MTA, which stands for money thrown away. So my question is, who do they sleep with? And as you know, they're volunteers, not employees, therefore they're not supposed to get a salary, a stipend, or a contribution. If they do, they're breaking the law. So you need to consider that. So now that you're retiring, Tommy P., you could stay home and be a housewife. All you have to do is wear an apron and a dress, because you're too big to wear a miniskirt. I could tell you a bedtime story, but you're too big to sit on my lap. One more thing I want to add. It's been almost 5 years since the MTA Police Department deactivated my reduced fare Metro card in this building downstairs. And the culprit who caused my downfall is in this room, and so far, no charge has been filed against him. He has been penalized. Why he's still on active duty remains a mystery. Where's the accountability? Where's the liability? Where's the responsibility? So, as I said earlier, Uncle Tom Prendergast, stay home and be a housewife. Just wear an apron and a dress.
Thanks, Mr. X. Jonathan Boeb to be followed by Neil Weissman.
Good morning, the chairman, the president, the board, and the guests. I greatly appreciate the hard work that New York City Transit does by managing and leading this huge transit system. New York City Transit faces hard times and criticism, basically because there are more than 35% subways that don't operate on time, which don't include those who 25% or less of the time. Overcrowding is the biggest issue. We had in August more than 55,000 delayed trains, in September 56, another 2,000 in October, and we suppressed 60,000 in November. The budget is never sufficient, and another 25% of overcrowding is due to train gangs and the right-of-way. As the result, we have more than 2 million people are delayed to work on a daily basis. Even if tomorrow we have all the funds that needed, it doesn't mean that the day after tomorrow we'll get all the problem fixed. Current status is unacceptable. Resolving the right-of-way conflicts in the current system will create a possibility of frequent and reliable service without touching the budget. The delays related to overcrowding will drop, and ridership together with revenue will increase. Adopting the new policy will create a possibility to address operational obstacles and problems instantly while keeping the subway operation smooth. New Yorkers deserve a better service, better subway. Please allow me to share this plan that I prepared with Ms. Hakim and other members of New York City Transit to review it and at least to get to a better subway service for New Yorkers. And lastly, I would like to have a bold request to you and to create a possibility for 6 train to operate and depart every 2.5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Neil Weissman, then Rebecca Balin. Mr. Weissman.
Good morning, Chairman Pendergrass, board members. In 2015, I came before you all on behalf of New York Cycle Club to ask for more group capacity in Metro North. Today, I speak on behalf of 150 organizations, businesses, and electeds, calling on the Port Authority to widen the bicycle paths on the George Washington Bridge as part of the upcoming recabling. You have hard copy of the details, the efforts. Today, I will lay out 3 reasons why the MTA should be concerned. As New York City's sole bikeable connector, the GWB attracts 7,500 cyclists per weekend. That's 3 times the capacity that Metro North now commits. And if the GWB can no longer function as a cycling facility, this agency will be hard-pressed to take up the slack. The Rockland, Orange, and Dutchess executives have written the Port Authority, citing the impact to cycle tourism. Number 2, if we lose a rail tunnel before Gateway is done, a widened GWB can support tens of thousands of Bergen commuters per day, just like the East River bridges after Superstorm Sandy surged from 13,000 to 30,000 per day. The bike commute from Fort Lee to Times Square is 55 minutes. Finally, DOTs throughout the region are investing in cycle infrastructure because it's massively cheaper than roads and mass transit. And the more popular it becomes, the more it frees up transportation dollars for other purposes. So if this region is going to grow the constituency for active transportation, it cannot afford to let the GWB become a choke point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rebecca Balin, and then Pedro Rivera. Ms. Balin.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Balin, campaign manager at the Riders Alliance. Our grassroots members are here today to speak about the fare hike and the dramatic impact it'll have on the lives of low-income New Yorkers, including also the need for funding from Governor Cuomo. But I also wanted to take a moment to honor Chairman Prendergast at his last board meeting. He's always been honest and a straight shooter with us and the advocates who work to improve public transit, and we've always appreciated his hard work for transit riders. So I'll get out of the way and let our members and Strap Hangers campaigns members speak about the issues facing them, but I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you very much. Pedro Rivera, then Sharon Bardalis.
Good morning, Chairman Pendergast and MTA board members. My name is Pedro Valdez Rivera Jr., and I live in Nitro Housing in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. I'm a longtime member of the Riders Alliance. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the plan to raise bus and subway fares. I'm here on behalf of over 8 million transit riders and my 7 family members who deeply I care about. They include my single mother, 3 sisters, my brother, my nephew, and my niece. The truth is that state leaders, specifically Governor Cuomo, have not identified a sustainable source of transit funding, and once again, riders are bearing this cost while facing growing problems, including increased delays and overcrowding. I'm the only person in my family with a reduced fare MetroCard due to my disability known as the mild autism spectrum disorder. The city should ensure that all New Yorkers could get around by offering a reduced fare MetroCard, especially those who below the federal poverty line. As far as our commutes go, like for example, every day when I take the J train from Murder Avenue to Lower Manhattan, most of the subway cars are very old, the R32s. They made since 1964, and they always breaking down sometimes. The old signal system where I see on the J often caused major delays. And because of the major ridership along the J, even before Superstorm Sandy come along, the J train does not allow frequency along the J since the service cuts back in June 2010. So me and my family find alternatives like buses, but it lead to bus bunching and overcrowding. From fares to the reliable service, our commutes, our transit system should not hold us back from our own potential. Here's what I urge to all you from us, especially for Governor Cuomo's employees. Keep the state's promise to transit riders with encourage to the government to appropriate and disperse state funds to the MTA capital program. My fellow New Yorkers and I count on it. Thank you so much, and Tom Pendergast, I wish you good luck for your future endeavors.
Thank you. Sharon Bardalis, then Xavier Masonette. Ms. Bardalis, good morning.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Sharon Bardalis. I am a student at BMCC and I currently reside in the Bronx. First, before I start, I want to thank you for allowing me to be here and be able to share my comments and experiences, especially with the fare hikes that are about to occur. First of all, fare hikes don't just happen out of nowhere. It is a result of the state refusing to put funding for New Yorkers who need public transit and millions of New Yorkers who use it on a daily basis. Fare hikes make it more difficult for struggling New Yorkers like me to afford to survive economically, and even more difficult for those who need to get to childcare, their job, school, and buy necessary items like food. Paying $275 or more during the week just to simply get to work and school has created a financial burden in my pocket. There were times where I could not go to tutoring on weekends because I didn't have the money for public transit. Now, I have a job, and the state and even you guys here at MTA can argue, well, you have a job, you can pay for it, but not necessarily. Millennials today make 20% less than baby boomers did at the same stage of life, despite being more educated, and this is according to an analysis of the Federal Reserve data done by an organization called Young Invisibles. On top of that, I'm helping my family financially while also saving money for future emergencies and college expenses. The reason I am here fighting for fair fares is because I refuse to stay silent on an issue that is going to drive communities of color further into poverty. Let's face it, the majority of those who have no issues paying for a fare hike are those same people who are CEOs of companies or working on Wall Street. How do you expect the economy of New York City to flourish if you're going to make it harder for communities of color to get a job, finish college, buy food, and live in stability? I am deeply, deeply disappointed that Mayor de Blasio didn't include funding for half-price Metro cards for low-income riders in his preliminary budget. But there's still time for the mayor to do the right thing by including fares in his executive budget to make transit affordable to all New Yorkers. No one, and I mean no one, should have to skip meals or jump turnstiles in their efforts to pull themselves out of poverty. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Xavier Missonet, then Samuel Santayaya. Morning, Mr. Missonet.
Afternoon. My name is Xavier Masonette. I live on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and I'm a student at the College of Staten Island. I previously spoke at the hearing for fair fares at Staten Island last month, I believe it was, or so.
That's good, too.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. As you all know earlier, fair fares do not just happen by accident. They are the result of the state refusing to put funding New Yorkers need into public transit. I, along with many people, struggle to just make it by with rent nowadays. I live in public housing with my grandmother and my grandfather, neither of whom work and live on fixed income. We've seen rent increase to up to $800, with $400 or more being given to them a month by Social Security. They rely very heavily on state help for handicaps and lower fares and such things like that, while I rely financially on my job in Midtown as a dishwasher, making $9 an hour to cover my funding for transportation, for travel, many times. I've struggled to afford being able to attend both my college in Staten Island and my job in Midtown, which always hinders me, considering that I need that job to pay for the Metro card that takes me to these areas. It's taken up to a third of my paycheck at times just to make it every week to work, to school, and to make it through to my daily routine. Many times, my grandfather has found himself walking to the hospital because he's given up his swipe so I could go to class in the morning. I'm fighting for fair fares, thank you, timer, as the cost of living in the city continues to rise and the wages of this city stagnate. I believe everyone in this city should be safe in knowing that they can afford a ride to work or class or their doctor's office. I'm disappointed that Mayor de Blasio didn't include funding for half-price Metro cards for low-income riders in his preliminary budget. But there's still time for the mayor to do the right thing by including fair fares in his executive budget to make transit affordable to all New Yorkers. As they've said, no one should have to skip a meal or miss their appointment or jump the turnstiles just to get to where they're going and avoid living below the poverty line. Thank you all again for your time and have a good day.
Thank you very much. Mr. Santayaya, you may want to raise the mic a bit, too.
I'm Samuel Santella from St. Albans, Queens, Southeast Queens, and I'm a member of the Riders Alliance, New York's grassroots organization for bus and subway riders fighting for better and more affordable public transit. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with regards to raise fares. Fare hikes don't just happen. They are the result of the state and the governor refusing to put the funding New Yorkers need into public transit. Half-price Metro cards will help me afford the monthly unlimited Metro card because with the required subway bus commute, I would spend well over $400 every month to take my little sister to school if I swiped $275 every time. To pay for that Metro card, I've had to give up my cell phone service, not buy new clothes, and skip meals toward the end of the month. When my mom, my little sister, and I need to go somewhere together, the cost also makes it difficult to celebrate academic achievements or attend doctors or human resources appointments. Last summer, when my little sister was out of school and I decided not to spend money on transit, I got around on my bike instead, which is free mobility. The money saved went to my little sister's school supplies and my first new pair of shoes in 3 years. Unfortunately, there is no practical way for my little sister to bike 7 miles with all these unsafe streets and no bicycle infrastructure. So a Metro card is a must to take her to school and be safe. I'm fighting for fair fares because more money every month will let me start paying for things that we keep putting off. And I know neighbors who have to sacrifice food for the cost of a swipe, so I'm fighting for them as well. I am disappointed that Mayor de Blasio didn't include funding for half-price Metro cards for low-income riders in his preliminary budget. But there's still time for the mayor to do the right thing by including fair fares in his executive budget to make transit affordable to all New Yorkers. No one should have to skip meals or jump turnstiles in their efforts to pull themselves out of poverty. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Santella. I apologize for the mispronunciation. Let's see if I can do better with Norma Ginez. And then Zach Acquardi. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Norma Ginez. I'm from the Bronx, and I'm a member of Riders Alliance. Thank you for the opportunity for speaking today at the Vote to Raise Fares. Already at $2.75 a swipe, the fares are an obstacle for me. If they raised it to $3, I don't know what I'm going to do. Fare hikes didn't just happen. It's because of the refusal of the governor to put the funds into public transit. I am an unemployed single mother of 3 girls. I have to take them to school, childcare, and need a Metro card not only to pay for groceries, but also to get me to political and community activities I'm involved in. I care a lot about making a positive change in my community, but it's hard when I cannot afford my Metro card. Sometimes I have to choose between Metro cards and buying a snack for my girls. There were times, especially when I was in the shelter system in 2012, that I had to beg for a swipe or walk really far in the hot and the cold. I want to start searching for a job, but after expenses, I can't really afford the added costs of going to job interviews. I'm disappointed that Mayor de Blasio didn't include funding for half-price Metro cards for low-income riders in his preliminary budget. But there's still time for him to do the right thing by including fair fares in the executive budget to make transit affordable to all New Yorkers. No one should have to skip meals, beg to get ahead, and get involved. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Zach Acquardi, and then I believe it's Joe Rappaport.
Morning, my name is Zach Accardi. I'm here from Transit Center, a national foundation whose mission is to improve public transportation. I'm here to respond to a debate that the board and the staff have been having about service quality indicators and performance reporting. I've brought a recent article that expands on my remarks. I bring you 2 specific solutions to resolve this debate, which will strengthen the MTA operationally, improve the board's oversight, and better inform the public about service quality. First, we recommend that the MTA replace weight assessment with a performance metric called excess journey time. This best practice metric comes from the International Bus Benchmarking Group, of which MTA is a member, and it's already implemented in peer agencies in London and Singapore. Second, we recommend that the MTA develop an automatically updated website for bus and subway performance metrics to replace today's burdensome board book reporting system. According to weight assessment, a rush hour delay on the Lexington Avenue lines at Grand Central Terminal affecting tens of thousands of riders is equivalent to a 3 a.m. delay on the Franklin Avenue shuttle, affecting 10. Both are indeed failures, but they should not be treated equally. Excess journey time, on the other hand, measures what riders and the agency actually care about: how much delay do passengers experience both on the platform and aboard the vehicle. It also spotlights delays that are longer and that affect the greatest number of passengers. The MTA can easily calculate this performance metric, and it would help the board and the MTA better understand where service improvements should be prioritized. Excess journey time and other performance metrics like on-time performance should be reported automatically and publicly on the MTA's website, not in a 300-page PDF. Instead of monthly or biannually, the MTA could follow Boston's MBTA, enabling riders to select the routes of interest and see performance trends over time, updated daily. Thank you for your time and for your leadership on this important issue.
Thank you very much. Joe Rappaport.
Good morning, and good luck, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to speak briefly, but this is my message. Governor Cuomo, don't balance your budget, this MTA budget, on the backs of people with the worst service. And we're arguing, I'm representing a coalition of disability groups, that the accessoride fare, the base fare, in other words, should be kept at $275. I'm the director of the Brooklyn Center for Independence of the Disabled. I'm here today in the back with representatives of the Bronx Independent Living Services and the Center for Independence of the Disabled, New York. Our groups advocate with and serve people with disabilities. You have a letter in front of you from 10 disability groups. We wrote Governor Cuomo, who controls the MTA, and Mayor de Blasio, urging them to direct the board members, not to raise the base fare. You should have that letter in front of you. Governor Cuomo and Mayor de Blasio and you, their appointees, have two bad choices in front of you. One is raising the base fare by a quarter, and the other, which our group support, would keep the base fare to $275, protecting accessoride riders and other low-income riders. It's pretty simple. You can raise you have the choice of raising the fare the highest on those who can least afford it, as we've heard today, who are barely scraping by already, who have the worst service, or keep the base fare at $275. The other point that I want to make is that accessoride users really do have the worst service of all your riders. You and I can walk outside and take a bus and a subway. Accessoride riders have to order a vehicle a day or two in advance. There's no spontaneous travel. You and I can just take our trip wherever we want. Accessoride riders may have what is a 20-minute ride. It may take 2 hours or more. There are many other reasons that accessoride riders have the worst service of all your mass transit users on this system. So you face a tough choice. No one really wants to raise the fare, but there's a way to do it right, and that would be to keep the base fare at $275. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jason Pinero, and then Omar Vera.
Good morning, MTA Board. Good morning, Chairman Prendergast. Good morning, Andrew Albert. And good morning, Veronica Vanderpool. And good morning to the rest of the board members. As you guys know, I've been here for over a year now. I want to thank Chairman Prendergast for the work that he has been doing for the past year. I'm deeply sad that you're leaving, but your legacy has to continue. And I want to address, as a regular public speaker, that the base fare should remain in $275, because as you guys know, that there are some stations in the outer boroughs that people take the risk of hopping the turnstiles. It could seem risky, but at the same time illegal. But I want to address in particular all the media that is here, and especially the New York Post, that they don't cover issues of a real subway commuter. You guys know that projects like Track Sweep, it is a complete failure. It should be more comprehensive. But at the same time, I want to phrase you guys to approve this month's procurement regarding the acquisition of new subway cars and new buses. And I'll be continuing my commitment to be here every month to address issues as always. And I will thank Tom Prendergast for his work. I'll call him the big boss because that's the title that he deserves. You're the big boss, Tom. We're going to miss you a lot. So that's all I have to say. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Panero. Omar Vera, and then Anthony Drummond.
Happy New Year, everybody. And I'm sad to say this is also my last month I'm going to be here before I start work on February 6th in Google's New York offices doing the kitchen pantry. First of all, I'd like to congratulate first Vice President Habersham for his 1 year anniversary as being the subway boss. And under his leadership, the W is back roaring better than ever. Thank you, sir. And he and President Haycom form a great team regarding the New York City Transit, and you both should be proud of that. And you both basically disproved the ignorant comments that a former TWU guy at York College said back in December when he falsely claimed that that Governor Cuomo and President Trump were in cahoots, it's BS, and that the MTA is bigoted, which is also BS. The MTA is actually one of the most diverse organizations that are known. But anyway, second, I'd like to congratulate the big boss, as Jason referred to, Chairman Prendergast. Mr. Chairman, you've been a great figure, public figure here. Under your leadership, this organization, the MTA, there has been no leadership as great as the current one. And I'm proud to say this. I used to be annoyed with the MTA back when I was in high school, like the late trains and stuff. But like I said, we could always do better. But this leadership has been phenomenal. And actually, Mr. X, you should learn from this because you shouldn't be insulting the chairman. You should be in his shoes for a month to see the type of work he has to do. Because your little insults of aprons and dresses will not fly here. And I mean it, Mr. X. Cut the garbage. Anyway, sorry. All right, I'm sorry. And I also like to thank everybody else here. I'd like to thank, once again, Andrew and Veronica, the senior and the junior champions of the writers, respectively, for your commitment to public work and for the advocating public. And here's the thing. I'm glad that at least you're leaning more towards remaining the fare at $2.75, but with better service comes better fare. Like better fares comes better service. Extend the N&W to LaGuardia instead of having the Port Authority use AirTrain LaGuardia. And last but not least, thank you all for being a service. And you serve as a role model. The mayor should learn about this. The mayor, whose real name is Warren Wilhelm Jr. He hates his father, but I'm not a fan of him. Mayor Wilhelm should learn a lot from Governor Cuomo and from all of you. Thank you, and have a great day, and have a happy month.
Thank you, Mr. Vera. Anthony Drummond, then Vanessa Agudelo, I hope that's correct, and then Ellen Shannon. Mr. Drummond.
Here. All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Chair and members of the board, my name is Anthony Drummond. I'm going to be reading just a brief prepared remarks from Borough President Eric Adams regarding the MTA Freedom Ticket program. Good morning. My name is Eric L. Adams. I am Brooklyn Borough President representing 2.6 million people who use the Metropolitan Transportation Authority's network to get them to school, work, in various locations throughout our city. I am submitting testimony to you in support of the Freedom Ticket proposal for transit riders and urge the MTA and Long Island Railroad to commit immediately to enacting the pilot program along the Atlantic branch of the LIRR. In Brooklyn, the Freedom Ticket presents an opportunity to support neighborhood development and growth in East New York, especially as the city is now into the implementation phase of the East New York Neighborhood Plan rezoning. It takes only 10 minutes on the LIRR to travel from East New York Station to Atlantic Terminal, while a peak hour ticket is $8.25, a significant sum of money of those living in some of the poorest census tracts in New York State. However, it takes more than twice as long to travel via subway from Broadway Junction to Atlantic Terminal. MTA data shows that nearly 3,500 seats were empty between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. alone from Jamaica to Atlantic Terminal. Additionally, the LIRR North Strait Avenue station is a 5-minute ride from the East New York station and only 2 short blocks from the AC trains in Bedford-Stuyvesant, which would give riders direct access to Wall Street in Lower Manhattan. Allowing a transfer between the LIRR and MTA at this junction would not only decrease travel time, but it would also broaden travel options for commuters. I believe that the Freedom Ticket program could be a significant asset in mitigating strain on the existing subway system, especially the upcoming 2-year shutdown of the Canarsie Tube and the temporary shutdown of the M line from Myrtle Wyckoff to Middle Village Metropolitan Avenue, while also providing residents in East New York the affordable option of riding the LIRR to Atlantic Terminal. From a transit equity standpoint, we will have a section of Brooklyn that will not have a rail service for a combined 3 years as a result of infrastructure upgrades. Though very critical to have done, the MTA has made investments in the long overdue 2nd Avenue subway and is looking to invest in Metro North in the Bronx. It is important that we have a fair and equitable distribution of our investment for Brooklyn commuters, especially with the new developments occurring along our rail lines and the increase in ridership. Thank you for your time. And in addition, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I do have copies of the testimonies and as well a letter that was sent exactly a year ago today to the chair regarding the Freedom Ticket pilot program. And also, Mr. Chair, on behalf of the Borough President, we wish you a great retirement, I understand, and we definitely enjoyed working with you and your staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vanessa Agudelo, and then Ellen Shannon.
Hello, good morning. My name is Vanessa, and I'm a concerned citizen from Westchester County, and I'm here to urge the MTA to divest from banks that are funding the oil pipelines at Standing Rock, such as Chase, Bank of America, TD Bank, and Wells Fargo. As Marty Goodman stated earlier, and I will be very brief because he had a great presentation, Standing Rock is still an urgent issue that we need to stand in solidarity for. We need to stand in opposition of the increase of fracking that's going on in our country. New York in 2014, as you know, has banned fracking, but we are still greatly being impacted by the heightening of fracking going on in North Dakota. And those are environmental effects that we will need to face in the coming years. I'm also here to remind you that Standing Rock is still a war zone. Myself, I visited Standing Rock back in November and December, and I have a friend, Sophia Walensky, who nearly had her arm blown off by a grenade by some of the police officers who are there fighting for nothing, in my opinion. It's important that we stand in solidarity with the No DAPL, the Sioux Nation, and it's important that we look at our portfolios and see how it is that we can divest from these banks to make a solid and a solid call to solidarity for the country to again oppose these pipelines that are scarring our lands, and bringing, and of course also hurting and putting these water protectors in danger's way. So thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Ellen Shannon.
Good morning. I'm Ellen Shannon, the Associate Director for the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA. As many of you know, the PCAC has been around since 1981. We've seen chairmen come and go, and I want to tell you that from that vantage point, we know that Tom Prendergast is exceptional. Now, Tom, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm going to. And the reason I'm going to is because people need to understand that there are great leaders in government, and you are one of them. And I'd like the press to capture how people feel about you. You've made the MTA stronger. and you've made its people stronger too. We all know and have heard here today some of the many things that you've done for the MTA, but I want to single out 3 times that we were most proud of you as a leader. The first was during Superstorm Sandy. Sandy was unlike anything that New York had seen before and caused unprecedented damage to the MTA system. Your handling of the aftermath was so noteworthy, it appeared on the front page of the New York Times. Your leadership and your team's knowledge and strength, got this, subway repairs border on the edge of magic. I've got a lot of copies still. Thank you for guiding us through that storm. The second was the opening of the 2nd Avenue subway. We now have trains running on the 2nd Avenue subway. People have been waiting almost 100 years to be able to say that. And you were the one that got it done. Thank you for helping us find the light at the end of the first phase tunnel. And the third time is every interaction you've had with the PCAC over the years. You've listened to us with respect every time. And when you disagreed, you didn't just dismiss our ideas, you pushed us to make them better. You've always been transparent on where you stand and why, and in doing so, you've made us better. Thank you for your honesty and respect. Tom, we hate to see you go. You've been a teacher with your vast, vast knowledge of the system and how all the parts work together and the people. You support your reasoning with facts. And you know you've shown us the importance of being dedicated to getting the job done. Nobody wants to see you go, but each of us is a better advocate and a better person for having worked with you. Thankfully, you're leaving a legacy behind. You brought greater accountability that ensures that legacy will continue to improve after you've gone. You introduced an asset management system that, when brought to full scope, will make the MTA more efficient and reliable, and is really the key to the future capital program successes. So, Tom, on behalf of all the people who admire and will miss you, on behalf of the PCAC, I just wanted to say thank you.
That, Mr. Chairman, is your last public comment.
I'll continue, and we'll just take advantage of the blank spaces here. Much has already been said about the 2nd Avenue subway, but I want to say once again how proud I am that the MTA employees who worked tirelessly on the project to get it done. It is already improving the commutes and the lives of tens of thousands of New Yorkers every day and spurring economic development. And once again, I want to thank Governor Andrew Cuomo. He not only expected us to finish on time, but gave us the support to do so. Second item I want to talk briefly about is sleep apnea. We will be voting today on a contract to expand and enhance our existing sleep apnea program so that it covers every MTA operating agency, including New York City Transit, the Long Island Railroad, Metro North, and MTA Bus. This new program will provide sleep apnea risk assessment to more than 20,000 railroad locomotive engineers, subway train operators, conductors, and bus operators. It will also make us the first transportation authority in the nation to systematically screen employees for obstructive sleep apnea and offer priority specialized treatment. There are 2 reasons that we are establishing this program throughout the MTA in advance of any mandate to do so. The first thing is because it's the right thing to do to ensure the safety of our customers, our employees, and the public. Secondly, screening, diagnosis, and continued treatment of constructive sleep apnea can improve the lives and save the lives of our employees. That's equally important. Lastly, later in the meeting of the board, actually up front, we'll be taking the issue of increasing fares and tolls and as indicated in our financial plan. We're going to move that to the front of the order because we've been delayed. Today will be my last board meeting, and we'll have plenty of business to conduct today, and I'll talk about that later at the end of the meeting. First of all, I need the minutes of the last month's meeting have been distributed to all members. Are there any corrections or omissions? If not, may I have a motion to approve the minutes. Second, all in favor? Aye. The meeting on the minutes are approved. I'm now going to go to the fare and toll increase portion of the agenda. Pardon me? David, are you on the phone? He's not on. Is there a presentation, or we just take it to the script? Yeah, because we've had the presentation a number of times. The fare and toll increases are a necessary part of the MTA's financial plan. The MTA recommended the increase after extensive valuable input from the public, from our staff, and our board members. We held 8 public hearings, hosted 4 video sessions, and reviewed all written comments from members of the public before making the decision on the best plan to choose. We put forward 2 plans that offered the lowest proposed fare and toll increases since 2009, when the MTA began the policy of biannual fare increases. We started the biannual plan in order to keep necessary adjustments as small as reasonably possible, increases by less than 2% per year on average. We are voting on, you've seen the 2 proposals, and we're recommending option 1. The monthly and weekly fares on the railroad, subways, and buses will increase by less than 2% a year on average, below the rate of inflation. Given that the base fare has increased in 2013 and 2015, we are now recommending that keeping the base fare unchanged at $2.75. This benefits riders who pay cash on the bus or load less than a round trip on their MetroCard and are more likely to be lower income customers. It also benefits our paratransit riders who are subject to the base fare. Customers who buy a round-trip fare will continue to get a bonus, making the effective fare with the bonus only $2.62. The 7-day MetroCard, which is more likely to be used by lower-income riders, is going up by only 3.2%. On the railroads, monthly and weekly tickets are capped at 3.75% and at $15, which further limits the increase for those customers who travel the furthest and have the highest fares. On bridges and tunnels, the car toll increase will be less than a quarter for those who have New York Customer Service Center Easy Pass. We were able to hold toll and fare increases down again this year because of the continued operational efficiencies and cost-cutting measures that we have had in place over the past 9 years. And we did so while adding service and capacity along our busiest corridors, most notably was the on-time opening of the new 2nd Avenue subway line. During the fare hearings, we heard a number of people comment on a couple of other ideas that were not technically part of the proposal under consideration: the Freedom Ticket and the reduced fare for riders with very low incomes. In the case of the reduced fare for low-income riders, social services are rightly the role of municipalities in caring for their residents, and it should be neither the MTA's role, nor can the MTA afford to provide what would be a very real benefit to the extremely poor. That said, our financial plan does an excellent job of containing costs so that we can keep fares affordable for all of our customers. We must stay focused on providing safe and reliable service, as that is our primary responsibility. However, using more of our capacity and giving people travel options, which is at the core of the Freedom Ticket, is something we cannot look at more, is something that we can and should look at more closely. To that end, I have asked staff to develop a field study for a discounted LAR MetroCard ticket to customers from select Zone 3 and 1 stations to Atlantic Terminal. This limited duration field study will help MTA understand customer demand for Atlantic Terminal and any impacts on service and operations such a plan would have. It will allow us to evaluate alternative pricing in a part of the system where we have capacity, and to bring that information back to the board after that is done so that we can make an informed decisions going forward. we need to, there's a correction on the staff summary I'm going to have Jim Henley comment on.
In the staff summary on the fare increases concerning New York City Transit, I have STOA, Staten Island Railroad, and MTA Bus. On the fifth bullet on page 2, it says 7-day express bus plus unlimited ride MetroCard increases from 57 and a quarter to 69.50. That 69.50 is a typo. It should be 59.50, which is as properly stated in the appendix tariff.
If that's noted, may I have a motion on the proposal for the fare increase? Mr. Merdler, do I have a second? Second. Any comments or questions regarding the proposal? Mr. Albert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I should state for the record that I'm generally not in favor of fare increases. I understand that they have to happen, but as you heard from some of the public speakers today, balancing the budget on the backs of riders is not the best way to handle a transit system, much less in a city like New York. I think transit financing should be done in a different way, whether it's on the way the Move New York proposal does it, or a few cents on a gasoline tax, which nobody would feel, or whether it's to try to capture some of the increased real estate value that transit always brings. And Second Avenue is an excellent example. The Bethesda station in Montgomery County, Maryland is a great example. Even Midtown Direct in Montclair, the minute a new transit option was announced, the real estate value shot up, and it would be great if we could capture part of that. Having said that, and dealing with the way we deal now, I have to say that for the vast majority of the MTA's customers, option B would have been the better proposal. That is because, Chief Financial Officer Bob Ferran showed us in his presentations with the pie charts, no matter what your income level, whether it was low, middle, or even upper, a tremendous proportion of each of those income groups used the bonus MetroCard. Under option 1, which is the one that is now being recommended, your bonus will go from the current 11% to 5%. Under option B, it would have gone up to 16%. Under the current options, you will have to ride 20 times to get a free ride. Under option B, you would have had to ride 7 times to get a free ride. That is a fare increase for a great number of New Yorkers, and it can't be pictured any other way. I know there is a psychological benefit to keeping the fare at $2.75. If the issue about the accessoride, perhaps accessoride ought to be dealt with in its own way, and maybe we ought to be doing something about the accessoride fares. But I don't think we should be lowering what would have been a major impetus to the rest of our system and its riders by the first option. I know there is a great psychology to $2.75, and it's great to be able to say we held it. But for the majority of our riders, it will be a sizable increase because they will lose a sizable portion of their bonus. Maybe there is a balance between doing something for accessoride and lowering the bonus from what would have been 16% to maybe 12 or 13%. Maybe there's just a middle ground. But I'm pretty convinced that the majority of our riders, the frequent users, would have benefited more from option B rather than option A. I'll just leave it at that for now.
I'm in a very different position than I've been for many years. I've always been at the podium at these meetings, and now I'm at the table. But I want to say that even if I was at the podium, I would still support biennial fare increases, and I support the idea of biennial fare increases because of the work that I do in 3 states. In New Jersey, we've seen the lack of this kind of dedicated structure, and fares recently were increased an average of 22%. In Connecticut, fares were increased for bus riders 17%, and we know as a board it was increased 6% for railroad users because this board, sans me, and someone else voted to support that fare increase. And I think without dedicated funding structures and financing mechanisms, we see the sorts of transit agencies that we have in our neighboring states, such as Connecticut and New Jersey. And it's not a slight to those agencies, it's just to point out the very dire fiscal realities that they face, that this agency, because of this board and dedicated revenue sources that have been put in place by the state legislature and the governors over many years, we've managed to avoid recently, over a recent trend, those sorts of exorbitant fare increases. I would like to echo the comments very eloquently put by Commissioner Alpert. I agree. I thought that B was a good option for the majority of users, but not at the expense of those using our paratransit services. And I think that it would have been incumbent on all of us to really have thought more diligently about the impact across the board. And thanks to the MTA staff for working so hard to put the options together and to put them together in a way that, quite frankly, has been more equitable than it's been, at least during my tenure as a transit advocate. So I want to acknowledge that effort, but also acknowledge that I think neither proposal was the best option nor the best choice. I want to make some other brief comments. As board members, we have a fiscal mandate to the fiscal integrity of this agency, but we also have a responsibility to the users of our system. And we want to make sure that our system is affordable and it's convenient and it's accessible and it's modern. And many times those mandates are mutually exclusive. They don't necessarily have to be, but sometimes they do present significant conflicts. And it's very difficult for us to decide what the best fiscal mechanism is, which is why it's important that we turn to all the financing and fiscal stakeholders that impact the MTA. One of them being certainly our state legislature. And it's important that we look at the state budget and how it impacts this agency in particular. For example, in the proposed budget, there's a $65 million reduction in the payroll mobility tax. And that's something that every elected official, and for those city council members who were here and have left, and any state elected officials who are not here but like to comment about the inequity of fare increases, I implore you to pay attention to what's going on in the state budget. Governor Cuomo had promised to maintain the integrity of a reduction in the payroll mobility tax, and he certainly honored that commitment for many years, but there's a proposed reduction in that fee. And the problem with that is we've seen a reduction in real estate revenues, we've seen a reduction in payroll mobility tax revenues. All of these have been pointed out at Monday's Finance Committee meeting. So we need to pay attention to the fiscal impact of the state budget on this agency the same way we're paying attention to the fare proposals. And I actually think it's very unfair to ask this board to vote on fare proposals during budget season, because we're being asked to take an action without understanding what the full state implications are. And that's a recent trend, actually. Those of you who know better will correct me, but I think that started in 2009, where fare increases were actually implemented in March. And if we can move this process outside of the budget season, we are better informed on the state's fiscal impact in the final budget before we are making determinations as MTA board members on the fiscal outcome that we are charged to do. Moving on to the idea of fair fares and such, that is an idea whose time is long overdue. There are significant policy statements that are made with regards to the inequity and the burden placed on increases for drivers. For example, there also tucked away in the budget is the permanent reduction of the permanent rebate for the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. It's not something that I support, and it's not that I don't support it because I don't think Staten Island residents deserve some sort of relief. I think they do deserve relief, and I think that relief should be in additional investment in transit, and this agency has moved toward that. There's a $5 million study for BRT, and there's a $5 million study for light rail. The Staten Island Railroad has had significant investments with a new station, but I think more should be done. In last year's budget, there was $1 billion put to stave off future toll hikes on the New York State Thruway Authority for 4 years, from 16 through 2020. And I bring this up to say that there is an acknowledgement that increases have an impact, but we can't just acknowledge that those increases have an impact on drivers. The increases have an impact on transit users too, and we need to build that in to our policy statements and to our fiscal proposals. Let's see, what else do I have to say? We need to stop relying so heavily on debt in this agency. Debt is good in many ways, but this agency has a significant debt load. $33 billion, $2.5 billion in operating money goes to service that debt. We did hear at Monday's meeting that we retired $945 million worth of debt, which is wonderful, but we actually also took out $1.5 billion in new debt. So we need a plan to reduce the reliance on significant debt moving forward. And again, I want to emphasize that some debt is really good, and it's the nature of financing a lot of these projects. Many of these projects cannot move forward if there is not sort of debt financing mechanism, but we can't rely on that so heavily, which is why it's important that in the state budget, and in the city budget, quite frankly, that the money that's been promised by both the governor and the mayor actually is dispersed. It is appropriated. There is a placeholder for it. You can find that placeholder in the state budget annually, but it needs to be dispersed. Only a fraction of that money has been dispersed. So we need to make sure that that promise is fulfilled, and that the governor and the mayor are actually dispersing the monies that they're saying and not just appropriating them. And then lastly, I want to say that it's not true to say that we are increasing fares, but we're not getting anything for it. And I've heard a lot of those comments during the public hearings. We are getting a lot for it. We're getting new stations and new buses and new subway cars and Wi-Fi and new technology. But what is true is that service is deteriorating in some very key, problematic, and troubling ways. And that service deterioration is accelerating. And what's also true is that the benefits that we're seeing are not equal benefits for everyone. So while a user on a particular line may benefit from a new subway car, there's a bus rider somewhere who's stuck in traffic because there's no dedicated bus lanes or because our buses are not updated. Just since 2010, we've seen 46 million riders on buses fewer. I said that all wrong, but you get the point. And that just shows that across the system, there's not equal beneficiaries of all of these investments that are being put into the system. And we need to recognize that. So when the public and riders come and say they're not feeling it or they don't see it, you know, there is some truth to that. But I just want to point out that investments are being made, and we need to acknowledge that in a way that's fair. And lastly, again, elected officials, we need to pay attention to what's happening in the budget cycle and the budget season. The budget, we have a few more months to go. Let's pay attention to what's happening and the impact on this agency. And thank you all for your time.
Ira. Thank you, Tom. My comments will be brief. I want to associate myself with Commissioner Albert's comments, the other rider rep currently on the board. I just want to add to that the monthly is the increase for the monthly ticket is almost 4%. I feel that what we're doing here is we're saying that if all you can muster together is to buy a one-way fare, we're going to keep your fare where it is. However, if you can put up that $6 and you've been getting this discount, you're going to be hit with the increase. If you can have enough money for that monthly, there's a lot of people who do that. They budget, they get that monthly, they depend on our system exclusively. That's why they probably have over 44 trips, maybe they have 50 trips. They're going to get the increase. So we're saying essentially that once you get your job, once you get a better job, we're going to increase your fare to subsidize someone who maybe is out of a job. And I think that's a very bad message to send. And that's why I think Plan B would have been the better way to go, because I think that the fare increase for working people shouldn't be that great. And I think that maybe the city should have taken up responsibility in this case on the fare for people who can't afford the $6. I'm not sure about that, but that would have been some place to go. As far as paratransit, I think the way to address that issue, I wish I had heard something at one of the hearings about it, then we could have discussed that and determine that maybe we should change our paratransit fare. But that's not to be. On a very good note, I'm very happy to see that that we're going to have a field study for Southeastern Queens. I've been anxious to see Southeastern Queens get some benefit from Long Island Railroad, and I'm happy we're looking at that, even though it's limited to Brooklyn. It's a good first step to have the commuter rails everywhere serve New York City residents, and I'd be very happy to see that. And that's it. Thank you.
Any other comments? Mitch?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am been here a long time and have gone through this process many times, but I am finally glad to see that some consideration is being given at many people's request over the years for those who live as far out in the suburbs as I do, and some people live in further out in the suburbs than I do, where the maximum increase is going to be capped. I think that is a very, very important signal to send to my residents out in Suffolk County, and I'm sure I speak for those from the Metro North areas and those areas, because they should no longer be required to pay just the percentage increase. It's not a percentage, it's a dollar amount. And while in some places that dollar amount may be very small in number, in many places that dollar amount is very large in number. And where you're already paying $200, $300, sometimes $400 for tickets back and forth, I'm glad this board is seeing the benefit of capping that number at what I would consider to be a much more reasonable number than it otherwise would be. So with that context, I'm pleased in that regard. I do want to mention two other things that we talked about. Well, one we did not yet talk about, and that is the discounts, the bonuses that people get. People get a bonus not just riding the subway and not just buying certain tickets on the subway. They also get bonuses riding the commuter railroads. And we have to do a better job collectively of letting people know the options they have for the best number of their rides. I cannot tell you how many people finally realize, because of the signs we put up at the TBTA facilities, that when you use your Easy Pass, you not only get a convenience, you get a bonus, basically. You pay less of a toll than everybody else does. We have to improve our marketing opportunities for all of our constituent agencies to ensure that the people who have that opportunity understand that there are bonuses involved at certain ticket options. And whether that's on the subways or on the commuter rails, we have to do a better job of making people aware of that, so that they can make what for them would be the most appropriate and most efficient decision on what ticket they want to buy. And third, I just want to mention the Freedom Ticket for a minute. That has been a source of discussion here for a long time. It's going to affect riders on the Long Island Railroad in certain cases, hopefully positively. It would be easy for some of us to say, well, as a result of that, we don't want to take the chance. But Freedom Ticket is very important to a constituency in this region. I hope it works. I'm glad to see we're actually going to do a field study and not just think about what might happen, but actually see what will happen. And then this board will have the facts necessary to make an informed decision as to whether or not it should continue, because I don't want anybody to assume this is a long-term effort at the moment. This is a short-term effort at the moment to see what will happen. Then we can make an informed decision, and if it is successful, hopefully be able to expand it to other areas in the region, because getting everybody to and from work or to and from where they want to go on any mode possible is important to me, and I'm sure important to the other members of this board, whether we live or represent people in New York City or don't. We represent the region, and we have a fiduciary responsibility to everybody in the region, regardless of where we come from, and that's why I'm pleased to support the effort to see whether it works. I'll be very interested to see whether it works, but I want to see for sure whether it does, and if it does, I will continue to support it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mitch. Susan?
Chairman, none of us has ever wanted to raise the fares, but inflation keeps moving on. And since we've had this 2-year cycle, we've managed to pretty much reflect what inflation is. When we start the cycle, everybody's kind of going along. Towards the end, I find it interesting. Each of us figures out what's best for our constituents. We try to describe our position to each other. We lobby a little bit. We gather the support we have. Then management comes up with a recommendation, and it's never anything that all of us wanted. It's always got some problems to each individual member. The West of Hudson has had a lot of pressure put on it to say no to this increase. Partly because we don't have much service, but largely because of the point that Veronica made, that West of Hudson is captive to 2 agencies. So as much as MTA has tried to cap the increases that this agency has, that isn't reflected in West of Hudson because we experience the increases here and increases from New Jersey Transit. Now, I have to thank MTA for recognizing that and using some innovative methods to help us be whole. They've tried to hold our parking costs down. They've given Carl some extra TZ Express, recognizing that lots of his riders go across the river and take the Hudson line. Most especially, West of Hudson has a 2% increase. I thank the MTA for that. I also thank my fellow commissioners. I'm sure it isn't easy to explain that discrepancy to their own constituents. When I attended the committee meetings on Monday, I was reminded that most of my riders use more than one agency. We are a family of services, and we lose if any one of our services is lost or lessened. And I think we as a group have been very good at recognizing that. I came to the MTA to represent my community, but when I signed on here, I took on a fiduciary responsibility for the entire agency. And I believe that the 2-year cycle of increases is the right thing to do for this agency. MTA needs this money to provide the operations that we have, and I will vote for it. Thank you, sir.
Tom?
Carl?
Thank you, Susan. You saved me a lot of air here. What Sue said is true, obviously. You all know that. But I've got a problem with the value gap that we have, and this is probably $30 to $40 million that just keeps coming every year, and we don't really get anything for that in Rockland. We were hoping that we've had letters go back and forth between my county executive and you guys here, the top people at the MTA, and year after year, nothing seems to happen. So I was instructed, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to have to vote against it, and then see what happens next year. Maybe we'll have better luck. Thank you.
Go ahead, Susan.
Carl is referencing the value gap that was demonstrated in a 2008 document prepared here. And my county wasn't getting full value at that time either. We may not be now. I don't know. There have been many changes since then. The payroll mobility tax went in. We've had both increases and decreases in service. There have been a lot of infrastructure improvements in both of our counties. I think that the MTA should provide a new look at the value gap, and I think you should allow the board members to participate in scoping that analysis. I know it isn't easy to do. I know it takes a long time. I've been here that long. But I do think that we as a board make better decisions if we have all the facts and all the information. And right now, we don't know whether we have that value gap or whether we've got a different value gap or maybe there's no value gap. Jamie told me, be careful what you ask for, because it could go either way in my county. But I'd still rather know than think.
Point well taken. Any further comments?
I've been supportive of the every other year fare increases because I didn't want people to be surprised, such as the time we had an 8-year freeze and then we had massive fare hikes. But if you take now the 2% a year or 4% every other year fare hikes and toll hikes to their eventual conclusions, at some point there will be a $10 fare and $50 tolls, and I'm not sure that is going to be sustainable in this region. So obviously we do need another way of financing transit. Otherwise we will reach that point at some place in time.
Thank you. Last comment, I believe, Mr. Ferrer, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like my colleagues, I'm a rider on a daily basis. Like my colleagues, I don't like to raise fares. And like my colleagues, I have a basic understanding of arithmetic. When we add a service, when we negotiate a new labor agreement so that people can support themselves and their families, that needs to be paid for. We all understand those basic facts. Some of the people I heard, and I, like you, unlike you, you attended all of them. I think I attended 7 of the 8 of them. And I heard a lot of people say a great many things. The thing that weighed on me most heavily was the one theme I heard when people said, "Don't raise that base fare." I have enough trouble getting into work. That still informs a lot of what I think about this. And of course, I remember all of this reminds me of when I was a councilman and we felt the need to explain our votes. I don't need to explain my basic mastery of arithmetic. And I don't think I need to explain what I heard, what we all heard at those fare increase hearings. And I don't think we need to explain that we need to keep focused on the fact that this action is one of the most consequential we will engage in all year and every year. Accordingly, Mr. Chairman, I support option 1. I think it's the right way to go. I think we've got to keep in mind the people who need us and rely on us most, and continue to keep an eye on what their needs are with respect to access to our system, with respect to improved service. Those are things that are important to me as a rider and to all of us who depend on the system to get to where we're going every day. I intend to vote yes on this, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any further comments? I'm not going to add any. I echo many of the comments that were made here. Good, thorough discussion. We're transparent. I should have read specifically for the record what you know, but I will do so now before we take the vote. You have before you a staff summary and resolution pertaining to fare increases in terms of sale as applicable to MTA, New York City Transit Authority, MAVSTOA, CERTOA, MTA Bus, Metro North Commuter Railroad Company, and the Long Island Railroad, as all set out in the resolution and associated attachment. It's been discussed. It's been moved and seconded. We will now take the vote. Are there any opposed? Record notes. All in favor? Aye. Next, we will consider the changes to crossing charges for our bridges and tunnels. As described in the materials before you, there are 2 staff summaries requiring board action. The first staff summary and resolution in the crossing charges package concerns the secret review conducted of the proposed crossing charges and the just and reasonable review. Materials relating to these matters, including the environmental assessment, the proposed negative declaration, and the just and reasonable report, were distributed to all board members. By resolution, the board's approval and adoption is sought of 1, a finding that the proposed increases in crossing charges will have no significant adverse environmental effects. 2, the negative declaration, including authorization of the TBTA president or his designee to execute the negative declaration. And 3, a finding that the proposed increases are just and reasonable under the Federal General Bridge Act. Do I have a motion to adopt this resolution? So moved. Seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The second staff summary and resolution in the crossing package seeks board authorization to adopt a new crossing charge schedule and authorizes the president of Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority or his designee to take all steps necessary and desirable to establish, implement, and permanently adopt the new crossing charges schedule. Do I have a motion to adopt this resolution? So moved. Second. Any discussion on it? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. We will now go back to the business. We need a report from the Committee on Finance. Mr. Schwartz.
Long meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Finance Committee met Monday and reports the following. There is 1 action item for board approval. The action item requests the board adopt the municipal finance disclosure policies and procedures. The committee recommends this action item, and I move it.
Any second? Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye. Mr. Chairman, there are 8 procurement items this month in a total amount of $181 million. This includes the walk-in item distributed at the committee meeting. There is 1 non-competitive procurement in the amount of $195,000. The committee recommends this procurement, and I move it.
Second. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye. There are 7 competitive procurements in the total amount of $180.7 million. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Second. Comments or questions? All in favor? Aye.
Mr. Chairman, there are no ratifications. There are 2 real estate action items, which are described on page 56 through 58 in the board book, distributed for this meeting. The committee recommends these items, and I move them.
Second. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
That concludes
yes.
Report on the Finance Committee. Transit Committee, Mr. Ferrer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Transit and Bus Committee met on Monday and reports the following. There were 3 procurement actions this month in the total amount of $106.6 million. There's 1 non-competitive procurement totaling $95.1 million for New York City Transit, described on pages 63 and 64 of the board book. The committee recommends this procurement, and I move it.
Second. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye. There are 2 competitive procurements totaling $11.5 million for New York City Transit, described on pages 65 through 67 of the board book. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Second. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye. There are no ratifications, and that, Mr. Chairman, concludes my report.
Thank you. May I have a report from Metro North Railroad Committee, Ms. Susan Metzger?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Metro North Railroad Committee met Monday, and I report the following. There is 1 action item for board approval. The action item requests approval to enter into a 3rd memorandum of understanding with the City of Newburgh for Metro North to reimburse the city for lease payments for the parking and ferry landing facilities used by the Newburgh Beacon Ferry for the period February 1, 2017 through December 31, 2018. The committee recommends this action, and I move it.
Second. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Abstain? Note the abstention. All in favor? Aye.
There are no procurements for this month. This concludes the report of the Metro North Committee.
Thank you. Long Island Railroad Committee, Mr. Pally.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Long Island Railroad Committee met this month. I report the following. There was one procurement action this month. There are no non-competitive procurements. There is one competitive procurement authorizing MTA Capital Construction to issue a competitive request for proposal for services related to the East Side Access Project. Committee recommends this procurement, and I move it.
Second. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye. There are no ratifications, and this concludes the report of the Long Island Railroad Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Pally. The Bridges and Tunnels Committee report, Mr. Merdler.
Took us long.
Mr. Chairman, the Bridges and Tunnels Committee met on Monday, and a quorum was present. I report the following. There was one action item for board approval. The action item adopts the revised toll violation enforcement regulations and authorizes the president of the authority or his designee to take all steps necessary and desirable to establish and implement the revised regulations as described in the staff summary and related attachments. The committee recommends this action, and I move it.
Second. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Aye.
There are 5 procurement items in this month in the total amount of $53.3 million. There are no non-competitive procurements. There are 4 competitive procurements in the total amount of $52.9 million. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
Second. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye. There is one ratification in the amount of $470,000. The committee recommends this ratification, and I move it.
Second. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye. This concludes the Bridges and Tunnels Committee report, and I thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been a very long meeting. I'm going to have some brief remarks about my departure, and we can go on our way. I spent 25 years of a 42-year career at the MTA. They've been some of the most challenging but enjoyable times of my career. The esprit de corps, the rapport, the issue of what we do on a daily basis in terms of delivering service to the people is something that gave me a charge each and every day that I was here. As the years wore on, snowstorms wore on too, but with working with a lot of people, it's been something that has been extremely rewarding to me. Simply, there's 3 reasons why I'm leaving. My wife, Kitty, my son, Dylan, and my daughter, Katie. About a year ago, I was off sick. I had some surgery, and I was laying up and thinking about things. And one of the things I looked at was the work-life balance that I had in terms of what amount of time it took me to spend at work with respect to what time I was spending with my family. I'm sure that's something each and every one of you who work in this organization has faced, or if you work in public service. And so, it's melancholy feelings about leaving because in many ways I've really enjoyed working here. But in terms of what I need to do in terms of my work-life balance, I need to move on to something else. It's been a privilege and honor to be the MTA chairman and CEO. I have to thank the governor for the confidence he had in me back in April of 2013 before he nominated me, and he was very, very clear in the interview that he had with me. He said, "Do you really want this job?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Do you really, really want this job?" And I said, "Yeah." And then he said, "Do you really, really, really want this job?" And I said, "Yeah." It's pretty insightful on his part because he knew what the demands of the job were and how important it was. And it was clear to him that, we needed to do something at this agency to be able to take it to the next level. I want to thank the board for the efforts that you have in terms of conducting the business. I think this board has continued to improve. I'm not going to take exception to any previous board, but we're very transparent, we're very open, we're involved in engaged discussion, and we make an informed decision. Special thanks to Freddie Ferrer as the vice chair. Wise, sage counsel, many times pulling me on the side. I remember his first scrum when he was acting chair, and he used the phrase, "This ain't my first rodeo." I remember it very clearly. And he's used that experience a number of times to pull me aside and say, "Tom, yeah, you can do it that way, but you may want to consider another way." Always in a constructive way, always supportive of the process. something that I found extremely rewarding, and I thank him for that. In terms of the MTA executive staff, excellent group of individuals, career professionals, consummate professionals, understanding public transit, doing the job every day, leading their employees, working with their employees to do what needs to be done. Special thanks to Bob Fran, Chief Financial Officer. If there's anything the MTA is responsible for, the operating agencies deliver the services. They're where the rubber hits the road, literally or figuratively, or the wheel hits the rail. But when it comes to the MTA's primary function, which is to make sure that it gets the revenue it needs, make sure it holds some level of fiscal control and structure over the operating agencies, Bob has been excellent in that regard. And I find him to be an excellent public servant. Thank you, Bob. As far as the rest of the rank and file, there's 71,000 employees in this agency. And for those of you that have worked in it, you know what it takes to be able to deliver this service. There are days that our employees don't want to get out of bed. There are days that our employees want to take care of their families first. But you know what? The public comes first. So if they have to make sure they teach their spouse or one of their kids how to use the snowblower because they may be missing in action for 3 days in a snowstorm, that's what they do. And that's the difference that this organization has with respect to a lot of other public sector agencies. We accomplished a lot, and I use the word we. Sandy, after we basically started to come back, we had to do resiliency and recovery projects. You all did that. The largest capital plan ever, something that's essential. It's been ongoing since 1982. It funds our state of good repair, our enhancement, and our improvements. Accelerated the introduction of technology to improve the customer experience and bring us into the 21st century. Governor always kids me about the fact that we're in 2017 and we're just bringing ourselves into the 21st century, but we did need to pick up the pace, and you've done that. And true expansion. For the first time ever, we really put new expansive projects into place. Extension of 7 West, Fulton Center, and 2nd Avenue Subway. And the fiscal control. We report 3 times a year, middle of the year, November and December, about how we're performing against the financial plan. And in each and every one of those plans, there's cost cutting. Because as a public sector agency, we need to demonstrate to the public that when we go into their pocket and take money from them, because that's in essence what we do when we're asking them to give us money to run the system, we're showing that we're spending the money as best as we possibly can. And we've been able to deliver for the past few years, quite a few years, and this is the lowest fare and toll increase we've had in the last number of years, but cost increases within the rate of inflation. It's a tremendous honor to work in public service. For those of you that work on it, you know it. You feel good at the end of the day that you've done something for the people that helped them with their life. Phrase I may have heard from somebody else, but sometimes I take credit for coining it. But this system is the system that never stops, because the city and the region never sleeps. And I am honored to have been able to serve as its leader for the last 4 years. Thank you very much. That concludes the business of the meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, not so fast. You've had to sit with great composure through any number of speeches by members of this board and members of the public. I urge you to sit through at least one more. You were very kind a moment ago, but, and I don't think I overstated when I point out that your first moments as executive director to become chairman and CEO with dealing with the aftermath of Superstorm Sandy, certainly a consequential event. You end your tenure at a consequential meeting. So your service on this board as our leader has not gone unheralded and unnoticed. People ought to know how devoted you are to this system, and to the men and women who work in it every day to make it work, and to the men and women and children who use it every day to get to where they need to go. They need to know that you take every decision very seriously and very personally, because when you ask somebody to come up with a little more money to help balance our budget, to pay the bills. You want to give them good service in return. And you're tuned into that. Your actions as chairman in promoting transparency at the MTA, and there are some of us around this table who have seen other public agencies. It makes us sort of the Mother Teresa of public agencies because everything is out there. You want to know about us, what we do, what we're thinking about, point and click on our website, and you've got it all. And that's in no small measure due to your respect for the process and respect for the riding public and all of us, all of the people in New York who depend on us. So, Mr. Chairman, I think you need to know, very rarely have I seen a public servant who is in advance going to be missed as much as you and held in higher regard by your colleagues and the people who serve with you than you. Enjoy your retirement, not too long, and I know your phone number, so you won't be too far or too long out of reach, and I'm grateful for your leadership.
Veronica.
The relationship that the chair and the executive director, CEO of the MTA has with the advocacy community is often adversarial. And in many ways it should be. And with you, at times it was, but it was never disrespectful. And I want to thank you for your receptivity and your access within the advocacy community. I've known you for 10 years, as long as I've been in this role. And while you were president of New York City Transit, you sat down and met with us then. And you continued that tradition and that access as CEO. And I've been working in this sector under four CEO/chairman, and you have provided the greatest level of, again, access to the advocacy community. And I want to truly thank you, and I hope your successor continues to follow in that leadership style. Not only did you model that, but you also instructed your senior staff to do so also, and they followed your cue. And it was very helpful to the advocacy community. And while I'm not trying to speak for everyone, I do know that it is a shared sentiment amongst my colleagues, and certainly within my organization, that you've been wonderful and very respectful, and I want to thank you for that.
As hard as it may be to believe, I'm the longest serving board member right now and have been here for quite a number of chairs, and you don't use the term irreplaceable lightly, but you are going to be irreplaceable. Your knowledge of the system, from how everything works, to the weight of a rail, to the width of the motorman's cab on an R68, I mean, it's just unbelievable. And you've always been approachable. You've never had the non-voting members feel like any less of a member. You've got a great sense of humor. As Veronica just mentioned, your senior staff you've told them to be approachable, and everybody has been like that. And you certainly have earned your time off. Hopefully you'll be back in the transportation field at some point, because you have a lot to offer and you know so much. And best of luck on your retirement, Tom.
Mr. Chairman, you heard earlier today the confluence of a very unusual group of people. Labor and transit advocates alike agreed that you have been able to give and have given dedicated and devoted service without rancor, without criticism, and listening, above all, listening. You have heard them applaud your service. You have heard them say you will be sorely missed. For myself, I've seen a couple of your predecessors, and I have served in government in this city and state for almost 50 years. I have never, in all of that time, seen any public servant who can equal the dedication, ability, and integrity you have brought to this job, and I thank you for it.
Vinny?
Mr. Chairman, I hired on the railroad as an assistant conductor back in 1994. You were the agency president that handed me my graduation certificate. And I often wonder how I ended up in a seat like this. But it is no surprise to anybody in this room how you've ended up in the seat you're in and that you've held over the years. We truly, truly value your expertise in the industry as a railroad operations guy is absolutely mind-boggling to me. And yes, irreplaceable is the word. I wish you all the best. Your treatment of the employees, has been truly appreciated by all of labor. Like my general chairman said earlier, yeah, there's been some battles, but when it comes to family, when it comes to getting the job done and protecting our hardworking members that make this place run, you have been incredibly understanding, responsible, and kind. And I truly appreciate your efforts, and we wish you the best with you and your family in retirement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You and I go back over 30 years to when I was counsel to the State Senate Transportation Committee and you were president of the railroad. And all through that time and all of your various endeavors, you've always understood that this is a region and that the person in Montauk is as important as the person in the city. And that is a perspective that not everyone understands. For those of us from the island, we sometimes think nobody cares about us. But we always knew you cared about us. Both in your former position and in this current position, you always gave myself and John Malloy, who is not here today, the opportunity to comment on everything, the ability to be informed, and the opportunity to understand how important this position is, both from a board position and from a CEO position. So I'll speak for myself, but I really want to speak on behalf of the 2.8 million people who live on Long Island and say thank you very much.
Norman?
Yeah, Tom, they told me this was going to be a roast, so I had to throw out most of my material. But I've been arguing to you for 30 years. Only my wife has seniority over you in the arguing category. And it's, all the arguments we've had, it's always been respectful. You've stood up.
Some of us all think alike.
Yeah. Well, I saw they still continue to go to the same barber. But it's all the arguments we've had. Quite often we were arguing about other people's mistakes. You were always respectful to everybody. You represented your managers much the same way we represented our employees, and you stood behind your people, and I very much respected that in you. And you forced us to prove our case. When we could prove our case, you were fair and just in how you administered your decisions. And that was absolutely all we could ask for. But it's not all ribbon cuttings, and you've really you're a stand-up guy. I'm going to miss you, and I'd wish you luck. But I know that you're going to have luck, because luck is a function of determination and knowledge and all these other great adjectives that people have laid on you here. And big shoes to fill, but I think, your shoe size is not something we're going to discuss today. But it's been an absolute pleasure for me. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, Mitch spoke on behalf of, I think, 2.4 million Long Islanders. I will take the privilege of speaking on behalf of 8.5 million New Yorkers. And just thank you, Tom. I don't know I can match the eloquence of many of my colleagues here. Obviously, the work you've done in this agency, they're so essential to the city, the service that you've given us, and obviously the service of all your colleagues at MTA. We are the city that never sleeps. We couldn't survive a minute, obviously, without the MTA. And I shall miss you as a colleague and obviously your chairmanship, and wish you the best in retirement, although I share the sentiment of some of my colleagues here. I don't think you'll be retired for that long.
I'm not going to reiterate everything I've heard, although I feel that in my heart, and it makes me very, very pleased and happy to see that so many people honor you the way I do. Your personal ethic shines through when you walk into a room, and that means that people absolutely believe in your commitment to every one of these agencies. Your undying belief that the employees can meet any challenge, no matter how hard, proved right time and time again. But there's also another side of you. When the first day I was here, Peter Calico said to me, "You're going to have a lot of hard days at the MTA, so try to have fun." What? I finally get it. You made it fun. Thank you. I'll miss you very much.
There's not much else to say except thank you. Just the people in the people you mentioned, Polly, and the people Mitch mentioned happen to overlap in a place I live called Queens. Oh, it's also Brooklyn too. But on behalf of the riders of the Long Island Railroad, of which I remember you as Long Island Railroad president, it's hard for me to believe that you have worked actually 25 years for this in some form of this agency. I didn't realize it was that much, but when you think back, it was a lot. And I remember you as Long Island Railroad president, of course. Through it all, you've had one thing people didn't mention is your temperament. And I think that really gave the edge, and that's something you can't buy that. And people just have it, and I think that's something that, as a head of head of transit, head of Long Island Railroad, and head of the MTA, you set the goal, what I would call, what it should now be considered the gold standard. In other words, as I said in an email, I think that a lot of people will be asking the question after you leave, when they say, well, what should we do about this, or how would we approach this, is what would Tom do, or what would Tom think? And I think that's something you should feel proud of. I know I have a great amount of respect for you. I think you were the best MTA chair since I hate to say since its inception, but I really believe that. And it's not just a matter of the times. It is you, and it's your leadership. On behalf of the Long Island Railroad riders, at least, thank you.
Mr. Schwartz.
Thanks, Tom. I've had the privilege of working with Tom in two different capacities, one as Secretary to Governor, now as an MTA board member. When it comes to competence, there's no one that comes close. When it comes to passion, Tom's second to none. And I want to say to the MTA staff that in every capacity, in every discussion, in every argument, in every fight, he had everyone in the agency's back. No greater supporter of the agency than Tom Prendergast. And I think one of the best compliments I think I can pay you, Tom, is that as secretary, you always have a lot on your mind and you're always worrying about a lot of things. I never worried about Tom when he was chairman and president of the MTA. I knew he was one of the strongest leaders that the governor of the state of New York could ever have, helping him do right for the people of the state of New York. And when you dedicate yourself to public service, it's never about getting rich, but it's how you become enriched and how you enrich the lives of others. And I can honestly say that whoever you are, whether you're a board member, you're an MTA employee, whether you're a rider, each and every one of us who've come in contact with Tom knows that their life has been enriched, and I thank you for your dedication in public service.
Thank you. May I now have a motion to adjourn? So moved, seconded. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.
Hi, Tom.
Hi.
First, I want to thank you for all your hospitality and accessibility over the years, and wish you the best of luck. There's a lot of talk about you having stuck around in part to see through a Second Avenue subway. You're obviously leaving before seeing through East Side Access. On Monday, there was more talk about delays.
Limits to one's patience. East Side Access is a very important project, but I think it's still the largest public works project in the country, and it's going to take time to get completed.
Any regrets about how you're leaving it?
No, I've used football analogies before. I look forward. And, I don't look in the rearview mirror. I try to look in the rearview mirror to avoid similar hazards going forward. So very often do I say I have regrets. So in answer to it, no. Second Avenue, but there were other things as well. Making sure we got the capital program, because that happened this year. Making sure that, we just keep getting important, critical things done. But I'm one in a string of chairmen. There have been a lot of chairmen before me, and I think, each one of them has left the organization in a better place and had a smooth baton pass. So it's those types of things that drove my decision in terms of, when I wanted to leave and make sure Second Avenue was done.
The landscape. How would you assess the landscape for transportation funding and, on a wider swath, infrastructure funding? We also have the uncertainty of a new president. How do you look at the landscape now? Are you optimistic, pessimistic, somewhere in the middle? Looking not just New York.
I'm almost always optimistic, so I'm optimistic. But I'll ask you a question. What's the size of the MTA asset?
You said $1 trillion.
Trillion. Okay. No. That's firmly established in people's mind. That's a lot. It's a lot of money. And the importance of knowing what that money is, and then what funding stream you need to not only operate it, but how do you maintain it, how do you improve it, how do you expand it, is important. So I'm glad that point's been made. I have said probably more times people can count that one of the reasons I came back to New York in my career when I came back to be president is because this region gets the funding right more than anybody else. And they've done it on a sustainable basis for over 30 years. I have seen people work at agencies where they didn't have the money. It's almost intolerable, almost unacceptable. So I'm very optimistic. That doesn't mean that there won't be challenges. There doesn't mean there won't be some, healthy tension dialogue. But the country at large is aware of the fact that the infrastructure we have needs to be upgraded, and we need to build new infrastructure. So I think we're in a good place.
Hi, Tom. Just first want to say congratulations on your tenure and your retirement from the MTA. I wanted to start off on the fare hike, a question about the Accessor Ride customers, the riders on that serve paratransit. They bore the brunt of a fare hike to $3. It would have been a 9% increase. How did that factor into the MTA's and yours decision to keep the base fare flat at $2.75 and go with option A?
To do a rewind and then I'll go fast forward. We've been on a biannual fare increase, I believe, since 2009. I think you heard some board members talk about why they believe that's good from a standpoint of fiscal responsibility. A couple of things happen. Not only do you avoid the issue of an extended period of time and then a fare increase, which is very, very large and impactful to people, I think you're keeping in the mind of the board members on a regular basis the importance of that fiscal responsibility. So we get more informed. We don't fall back off that learning curve. We keep climbing the learning curve. And before I was chairman, I probably started to pay real close attention to it with Jay and with Joe Loda. There are different levers you can move back and forth to generate the revenue you need to support the operating budget and fund the capital program, and try to determine how best you can spread and shoulder those impacts. And so for the last two fare increases prior to this one, we raised the base fare. That certainly impacts the people at the lowest end of the economic strata and the people that are dependent upon paratransit. And I think this time, we took a look at that as a board and felt that, yes, it may have impacted other areas, but on balance, that may be what was important to do at this time. And that's the way the board looks at fare increases. So they look at the issue of the bonuses, they look at the issue of the people that have paper ride, the people that have with bonus, the people that have 7-day Metro cards and 30-day Metro cards, and try to figure out, generate the revenue we need, make sure we stay within our own affordability envelope, but also the customer's affordability envelope.
Was Accessor Ride fares specifically a reason for going for option A over B?
Absolutely. I think it's option 1, option 2, but yeah, absolutely, yeah. And we did receive quite a bit of comments and letters later in the process. We heard it in some of the public hearings, but certainly later in the process. And I think it impacted a number of board members from the standpoint of is it acceptable? And maybe that's why we gravitated toward the issue of the base fare remaining flat.
Congratulations on your exit, and thank you always for teaching us so much about the trillion-dollar asset. Now, with the opening of the 2nd Avenue subway, and today with keeping the fare steady, those are moments when you will be cheered by riders, something I know isn't always possible for the MTA. How's that feel? Is that an unusual feeling?
I look at things in the long term. I look at things personally and professionally in the long term. So, and if you do that in life, you realize that you can't always take positive steps. Sometimes there's a negative step or something that slows you down. So that when I look at my entire time at the MTA, which was started in January of 1982, 35 years ago, I think we carried a little bit less than 1 billion people a year, like 970 million. We're up to 1.7 billion people a year. So that's a tremendous jump over 35 years. The reliability of the cars has increased. All kinds of other indicators have increased. Ridership on Long Island Railroad is an all-time high, with the exception, going back to 1947, I believe. And Metro North is an all-time high. So those are good, make you feel good. And makes the other employees that work here feel good. But it's always looking, you don't rest on your laurels. You don't say, okay, we did okay, because you're only as good as your last rush hour, your last snowstorm, and the ability to increase capacity, deliver service better, and make sure the people are satisfied with what they got. And that's the best way for me to sum it up.
Prendergast, is this working?
Just speak into it.
I don't care. You said that every chairman has improved successively on the last one. I was wondering if you had any pitfalls you would point out for your successor, or just any advice generally for the next MTA chairman?
I think it's the funding issue. I mean, there'll be a challenge there, but I think that's a challenge everybody has. Keeping moving forward in terms of advancing the delivery of service. And the one challenge I would say is, for a lot of us who are long in tooth and were around when the system was really, really in a bad state, we have to remind ourselves that an ever-growing percentage of our ridership population never experienced that. So that's not the frame of reference they start from. They start from a frame of reference more in the 80s or actually 90s or early part of the 2000s, and we got to keep pushing the ball up the field. So I would say that is the focus that whoever is going to run this place needs to do.
Hi, Chairman. Congratulations on your departure. Just following up with that question, obviously you've been working with the MTA for so long, but was there anything, what most surprised you by the role when you took it 4 years ago? What was the most surprising element of being a leader here that you weren't really aware of?
It's hard. First of all, it's, I think, the only role in the country that's chairman and CEO, and you've heard me talk about that before. You've heard me talk, and I sometimes say lightly or jokingly that, the CEO part of me is in constant healthy tension dialogue with the chairman part of me, and I mean that, because that's a challenge that not other people have. There's a lot of benefits to it, though, because there's commonality, focus, purpose, etc. But that probably was one that, you can't appreciate until you're in the role, because I've had a lot of senior operating roles, senior CEO roles. So that load coming at me, I fully understood. When you're chair of a board that is as actively engaged as this board is, trying to make informed decisions, that requires, time and effort with them and by you, and that's probably the one item that was a surprise to me. Didn't bother me. I knew I had to deal with it, but that's a surprise, I guess.
I wanted to ask you, having said that, if you can explain why it took more than 3 years to expand the sleep apnea program, more than 3 years after the deadly Metro North derailment, to expand this testing.
First of all, I don't know if you know it, but I'm a sleep apnea candidate, okay? And I didn't know I had sleep apnea until I fell asleep driving a car 3 times, which is pretty serious. Thank God I wasn't flying a plane. But immediately upon being diagnosed and being treated, I saw a difference in the quality of my life. So we said here in this particular procurement, we got its bifurcated approach. One is to make sure that our operating employees are fully capable of doing what they need to do. The second is increase their health. Whenever we have gotten in to an issue that affects, it's a health issue, it's a health exposure issue, Ebola or whatever, Zika, we want to be guided by the science. We do not want to make arbitrary and capricious decisions and rush into something to effectuate a treatment that may not be effective. And when you have the breadth of employees that we have, nobody has the number of locomotive engineers we have, train operators we have, conductors, tower operators, we were guided by the pilot program that Metro North had because it helped us learn what those impacts would be, because you're affecting someone's life. When you tell them, one of the fears they have is, does this mean I can't work? How am I going to provide for my family? So we want to make sure we do it right. Could we have done it faster? Possibly. We're the first to do it. We're the first to do it at this level of commitment, and there will be impacts, but it's the right action to take. Because we need to assure to our customers that we're doing everything we can to make sure the employees who operate our equipment, run our trains, throw switches, are fully capable.
Thanks, Tom. Certainly miss you. How will the Freedom Ticket project study work, and why is it only from one point or to Atlantic Terminal? And would Metro North be involved?
Well, first of all, I think the area where the greatest likelihood of people having long trips because of the way the system is laid out is Southeast Queens. Years ago, when we had the two fare zones, that was one of the issues. So it wasn't just the fare issue; it was the time of transport, how you had to take a bus. I believe there's an agency head here who was raised in Southeast Queens. I'm looking for Ronnie, and she tells of her own experiences. I think you had to take 2 buses to get to the subway. Okay, so irrespective of price, there's that time impact. There were a number of discussions on the part of board members that said, hey, listen, if you've got capacity on one of your other modes, and you can, by way of pricing, get people to use that capacity and they have a shorter trip, why don't we experiment with it? Why don't we take a look to see what happens? And that was the advocacy groups that proposed doing that. And they kept coming back at us saying, why can't you take a look at this? The highest likelihood of a benefit is in Southeast Queens. I'm a firm proponent of putting my toe into the shallow end of a full pool rather than diving into the deep end of an empty pool. And that's something I learned from David Gunn years ago. So we want to try there to see how it works. Do the riders see the benefit that we think they'll see? Does it have any unintended consequences? If so, can we manage them? And then we would expand it to other places. But it's the idea of putting your toe in the water first, seeing what it's like, and then going in the pool.
Can you address 2 related criticisms? One is from some of your own board members about raising fares amid subway delays and train breakdowns, and the other is about the high cost of the Second Avenue subway.
The first issue is it takes money to run this system. Let me back up. The issue of delays and problems people experience on the system is one that we have to embrace. I think we are. I think we're doing a number of things to address it, but we need to do better because we need to get to the point where the perception of the customers is such that we've done that. I think one of the board members raised the issue about you can't raise fares unless we see improved services. Well, maybe you're seeing improved services in terms of more countdown clocks or Wi-Fi in stations. The cost of living is the cost of living, and we have a labor force that is in large part of the equation, and we need them, and they deserve, fair raises. So all of those factors put together, that would be the best way for me to respond. At the same time, though, we are taking cost out of the organization. We have taken 1.7, 1.8 billion, I'm looking for Bob, out of the organization. 1.6 on track to take, I think, 1.8 out. So that's constant pressure is kept in place and in some cases it's getting more and more difficult for the agencies to do that because all the low-hanging fruit is gone. In terms of Second Avenue subway, I hate to use the term relative, but it's relative. That is the most dense part of what exists in the United States in terms of number of people per square mile, 111,000 people. If you juxtapose the construction of the Second Avenue subway in terms of its finished product versus the Lexington Avenue line, you see extremes at the widest possible. You see local station platforms on the Lexington Avenue line, they're about 1.5 times my height in terms of their width. And when if you've experienced that on a daily basis, you're often seeing trains coming into stations before the preceding train has left the platform. And you got extremely crowded conditions. If we see delays, we also have to get to a point where we stop entry into the stations. You don't see the fire and life safety improvements that exist today because of standards being improved that you see on 2nd Avenue. So it's very hard to compare. But even when we compare with new construction, I'm not so sure construction in London is the same as construction here. I've lived in London a short period of time. I've visited Paris. I'm never going to denigrate other cities, especially foreign cities. This city never sleeps. Large portions of this city never sleep. There are people on the street all hours of the day and night, deliveries being made, garbage being picked up. The cost of construction in New York is different, but at the end of the day, we need to find ways to build them cheaper.
But have you had any conversations with the new administration about federal funding? What do you think is the likelihood that that funding will come through? What can you tell us about that?
It's too early to say about the administration. There was a tremendous amount of support within the local, the state and local governments when we submitted the first portion of the 15 through 19 plan for approval, and they said, you're not doing enough for 2nd Avenue. So we've added money, and we're trying to accelerate when we would start the second phase. So we're all seeing that benefit. We're all seeing that importance. But it's too early to say in terms of the new administration, because I don't even think they've identified or named an FTA administrator yet.
Chairman, congrats on your retirement. Just wondering about the low cost, the half fare for low income, pardon me. You mentioned that the city should be in charge of that and that they should cover that. Do you have any idea how much that would cost? And if that is something that you think that the city should be 100% responsible for? Or is that something that, if the city covers 75%, that the MTA would cover 25% or something like that?
I believe the cost is order of magnitude $200 million. And I'll let others have a dialogue with respect to how the cost should be shared. Because we have that as part of the regular dialogue here anyway. I mean, if you remember the discussion on the 15 through 19 program where we got to a point, there was an original program with original projections of money from the state and the city, and then we ended up in a place where it was, I think, $8.3 billion from the state and $2.5 billion from the city. So that's part of a dialogue by the legislative part and executive part of the state and city. But from a standpoint of, if you take a look at programs in other cities and other transportation systems, it's been the municipality that has funded that more than the transportation agency. Now in San Francisco, they're one and the same, because I think Muni is part of the city government. It's not a state agency.
First, congrats on retirement. We're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of the Valhalla train crash. So I want to get your thoughts on that, especially since no NTSB final report. So I want to know if you had any idea maybe what might be in that, when it might be coming out or anything like that.
Well, we don't wait for the NTSB report. We're supportive of the NTSB. We're parties to the investigation. We don't wait. We've implemented some things. We've commissioned a study to take a look at grade crossings across the entire network, both Long Island and Metro North, identifying in a hazard category way which are the most likely crossings to have potential for those types of incidents. We're looking at new technology to be able to provide additional warning to motorists. And ways to be able to physically detect a motor vehicle on the crossing. And those are some of the things we're doing. Ramped up and enhanced education programs for people, working with DMV to make sure. Because, I mean, I remember when I took my first driver's license, I remember the DMV manual, there wasn't a lot on grade crossings. So we need to basically tell people what some of those exposed hazards are. And also, working with the FRA and other agencies, like a lot of people nowadays use these kind of devices to help them, go through as they navigate, identify grade crossings, and try to put in technology to make sure they don't turn onto the tracks, which has happened here a number of times along the Long Island Railroad, instead of the road immediately adjacent to the tracks. Those are some examples, but it's a tireless effort. We got to keep going. There's just too many grade crossings, too much exposure.
Hello, wishing you best of luck in your next chapter again. Since someone referenced the MTA as Mother Teresa of transparency, what is the cost of the labor deal that you all negotiated with TWU? Would it have an impact on fares? And I know a few years ago, during the last deal, the price tag was, I think, $500 million over 4 years. So is it in the same ballpark?
Well, first of all, we said it when we inked the deal as part of a collective bargaining negotiation with the Long Island Railroad, with the TWU, that it was affordable and within our financial plan, and we'll stick with that. The responsibility of the union leadership to go out and explain to their members as they get a ratification vote, what the terms of the deal are. I don't want to step in the middle of that. We think it's a very fair deal. They think it's a very fair deal. So we're not going to comment on that publicly. But I will tell you it's affordable and it's within our financial plan. Thank you very much.